A man collapsed in the dust of Kibwezi village square, blood seeping through his torn clothes, his face hidden beneath a filthy hood. The crowd that had been laughing and singing just moments before fell silent. Someone screamed. Children were pulled back by their mothers. And then the whispers started, spreading like wildfire through the Christmas Eve gathering. "Is that him, the judge?" "It must be. Elder Okonkwo said he would come." "Quick, someone get a camera." But before we understand why an entire village was about to perform the most elaborate show of fake generosity you've ever seen, and before we discover the identity of this mysterious beggar that will leave you absolutely destroyed, we need to go back. Back to earlier that morning, when Mama Kioma stirred her pot of jollof rice at her small food stall and whispered the same prayer she'd whispered every day for 3 years. "Please God, bring my son home." Katja had left for Lagos with dreams bigger than the baobab trees that dotted their village. He'd promised to return wealthy, to build her a proper house, to make her proud. That was 3 years ago. 3 Christmases without a word. 3 years of wondering if he was alive or dead, successful or sleeping on Lagos streets. The not knowing was worse than any truth could be. "Mama Kioma," a voice interrupted her thoughts. It was young Ada, breathless with excitement. "Have you heard? Elder Okonkwo is making an announcement in the square tonight. Something about a competition." Mama Kioma smiled weakly. "Competition for what, my dear?" "Nobody knows, but people are saying there's a prize, a big prize." Ada's eyes sparkled with the innocence of 12 years. "You should come." As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, the entire village gathered in the square. Elder Okonkwo, the wealthiest man in Kibwezi, stood on a wooden platform wearing his finest agbada. His presence alone commanded silence. "People of Kibwezi," his voice boomed across the crowd, "Merry Christmas Eve." "Merry Christmas," the crowd responded in unison. "Tonight, I have something special for our community, something that will test who we truly are." He paused, letting the suspense build. "I am offering a prize of 500,000 naira to the person who shows the greatest act of generosity this Christmas." The square erupted. 500,000 naira. That was more money than most families saw in 5 years. That was a new roof, school fees, a motorcycle, a new business, everything. Ngozi, the merchant woman who sold fabrics in the market, was already calculating in her head. She could afford to give away a lot and still come out ahead if she won. Pastor Adebyo was thinking of the headlines. "Man of God shows ultimate charity." Chief Mbanu was mentally counting his savings, wondering how much he needed to give to guarantee victory. But Elder Okonkwo raised his hand again. "There is one condition," he said, his eyes scanning the eager faces before him. "The winner will be chosen by a stranger who arrives in our village tonight. You will not know who he is. He will be watching you, testing you, judging your hearts. And tomorrow, on Christmas morning, he will reveal himself and announce the winner." The excitement transformed into something else: suspicion, paranoia. Everyone began looking at each other differently. Who was the stranger? Was he here already? Was that new face by the well, that man sitting alone under the tree? Mama Kioma felt a heaviness in her chest as she watched her neighbors transform before her eyes. This wasn't about generosity anymore. This was about winning. She returned to her stall to close up for the night, wrapping the leftover food carefully. Someone would need it. Someone always did. As she tied the last knot on her bundle, the commotion started. The beggar had arrived. He stumbled into the square like a man who had walked through hell itself. His clothes were torn and stained with what looked like blood and mud. His feet were bare and bleeding, leaving small red prints in the dust. His face was hidden beneath a ragged hood, and when he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "Please," he rasped, falling to his knees. "Water, food, I beg you." The transformation in the crowd was instant and almost comical if it weren't so tragic. This was him. This had to be the judge. The test had begun. Ngozi moved first, practically sprinting to her house and returning minutes later with an absurd amount of food. Fried chicken, jollof rice, moin moin, plantains, even a small goat's leg. She arranged it all in front of the beggar like a feast for a king, making sure everyone could see. "Here, my brother," she announced loudly, her voice carrying across the square. "Eat, eat everything. I have prepared this feast especially for you." She gestured frantically at her eldest son. "Ejike, take a photograph. We must capture this moment of charity." The beggar reached for a piece of chicken with trembling hands, but before he could eat, Pastor Adebio had pushed his way forward. "Wait, wait," the pastor called out, his arms spread wide. "This man needs more than food, he needs shelter. Come, my brother, you will sleep in the church tonight, in my own quarters, on the best bed we have." He turned to the crowd, his voice rising like he was delivering a Sunday sermon. "For did not Jesus say, 'Whatever you do for the least of these, you do for me'? I am honored to serve God's messenger." Chief Mbanu wasn't about to be outdone. He pulled out a thick wad of Naira notes, counting them loudly enough for everyone to hear. 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 Naira. Here, stranger, take this money, buy whatever you need. This is the generosity of a true leader. The beggar sat in the middle of this circus, surrounded by food he couldn't eat, money he hadn't asked for, and offers he hadn't requested, while cameras flashed and people jostled for position. Everyone was so busy performing their generosity that nobody noticed the beggar wasn't eating, wasn't speaking, wasn't even looking at them anymore. He was looking past them, at a woman approaching slowly from the edge of the square. Mama Kioma had seen enough. The spectacle made her stomach turn, not because she judged her neighbors, but because she recognized something in the beggar's eyes. Pain, real pain, the kind that can't be photographed or quantified or won. She walked through the crowd quietly, and when she reached him, she didn't announce herself. She simply said, "Come." One word, but something in how she said it made the beggar look up. Their eyes met, and for just a moment something passed between them. Recognition, understanding, neither could say. "Mama Kioma," Ngozi called out, almost mockingly. "Surely you're not going to compete. What can you possibly offer that we haven't already given?" Mama Kioma didn't answer. She simply extended her hand to the beggar. He took it, and she helped him to his feet. Together, they walked away from the crowd, away from the cameras, away from the performance, to her small hut at the edge of the village. Inside, she pointed to her only chair. "Sit." He sat. She poured water from her clay pot into a cup and handed it to him. He drank deeply, his hands shaking. She unwrapped the food she'd brought from her stall and placed it before him. Simple rice and stew, nothing fancy, nothing Instagram-worthy, just food. "Eat," she said softly, "take your time." He ate slowly, and she didn't rush him or ask questions or wait for gratitude. She simply busied herself preparing a sleeping space on her mat in the corner. When he finished eating, she handed him her only blanket, the one her grandmother had woven 40 years ago, the one she treasured more than anything else she owned. "Rest," she said. "Whatever trouble you're carrying, leave it outside tonight. Tomorrow is Christmas. Tomorrow is hope." The beggar clutched the blanket, and for the first time he spoke more than a word. "Why?" His voice was hoarse, raw. "You don't know me. I could be anyone. I could be dangerous." Mama Kioma smiled, and there was such gentleness in it that the beggar felt something break inside his chest. "I know pain when I see it," she said, "and pain deserves compassion, not questions." She turned down the lamp and left him alone in the darkness, going to sleep on a thin mat in the corner without her blanket, without complaint, without expecting anything in return. The beggar lay awake for hours, clutching that blanket, tears streaming down his face in the darkness. When Mama Kioma woke on Christmas morning, the beggar was gone. The blanket was folded neatly where he'd slept, and on top of it was a small piece of paper with 2 words, "Thank you." The village square was already packed when she arrived for the big announcement. Everyone was dressed in their Christmas finest, excitement buzzing through the air like electricity. Elder Okonkwo stood on his platform again, and beside him stood a man in an expensive suit. Tall, distinguished, clearly from Lagos by the way he carried himself. "People of Kibwezi," Elder Okonkwo's voice rang out, "Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas," the crowd responded, but there was confusion in their voices. "Today, we reveal our judge. Let me introduce Mr. Alumide, a philanthropist from Lagos who has graciously agreed to choose our winner." The well-dressed man stepped forward with a smile, and that's when the whispers started. "Wait," someone said, "if he's the judge, then who was the beggar? Where is he?" The confusion rippled through the crowd like a wave. Ngozi looked around frantically. Pastor Adebio's confident smile faltered. Chief Mbanu's face went pale. Elder Okonkwo raised his hand for silence. "Yes, I see you understand now. Mr. Alumide has been here for 3 days, disguised as a vendor in the market, watching how you treat your neighbors in everyday moments. But the beggar," he paused, and the tension was unbearable. "The beggar was someone else entirely. Someone who wanted to return home and see if his village still had the heart he remembered." A figure stepped out from behind the platform. Clean clothes, washed face, no more hood hiding his features. Mama Kioma's legs nearly gave out. The crowd gasped. Several people screamed. "It was Kachai." "Kachai," Mama Kioma's voice was barely a whisper. "My son, my son." She ran to him, and when they embraced, half the village was crying. 3 years. 3 years of absence, and here he was, returned on Christmas morning in the most impossible way. "Mama," Kachai's voice broke as he held her. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I stayed away so long." "You're here," she sobbed into his shoulder. "You're alive, you're here, that's all that matters." When they finally pulled apart, Kachai turned to face the village, his mother's hand firmly in his. His voice carried across the square, strong despite the emotion in it. "3 years ago I left Kibwezi seeking fortune in Lagos. I found it. I made money, bought nice clothes, ate in fancy restaurants. But I also found something else. I found emptiness. The city is cold. People step over beggars like they're garbage. I watched a man die on the street once while hundreds of people walked past him, too busy checking their phones to notice." The village listened in stunned silence. "I wanted to come home," Katja continued. "But I was afraid that Kibwezi had changed too, that the warmth I remembered was just nostalgia, not reality. So I came back disguised. I came back as the person nobody sees, nobody cares about, a beggar, and I watched what you did." Ngozi's face burned with shame. Pastor Adebio couldn't meet his eyes. Chief Mbano stared at his feet. "I saw performances," Kachai said. "I saw people competing for a prize. I saw cameras and calculations and everything except what I was hopping to see." He turned to his mother, and his voice softened. "Except for one person who didn't know the beggar was her son, one person who had no idea a competition even existed anymore, one person who saw a human being in pain and responded with compassion, not performance." Mama Kioma was crying again, but Kachai wasn't finished. "Mama, you gave me water from your only pot. You shared your simple food without apology. You gave me grandmother's blanket, the one thing you treasure most in this world. And you asked nothing, expected nothing. You just gave because that's who you are." The crowd was completely silent now. Even the children had stopped fidgeting. But then Mr. Alumide stepped forward, and when he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "Mama Kioma," he said, "I also have something to tell you. Something that explains why I agreed to come to Kibwezi for this competition." Mama Kioma looked confused. "Sir, I don't understand." 15 years ago, Mr. Alumide began, and his voice trembled, "I passed through this village with my mother. She was dying, cancer. We were trying to reach the hospital in Nairobi, but our car broke down right here in Kibwezi on Christmas Eve." The crowd leaned in, sensing something enormous was about to be revealed. It was late. The village was having a festival, music, dancing, celebration everywhere. My mother was in terrible pain, burning with fever, begging for water. I knocked on door after door. Please, just water for my dying mother. Do you know what happened? The silence was absolute. Every single door closed in my face. Everyone was too busy celebrating to help a dying woman and her desperate son, except, his voice broke, except one person, a young woman selling food at a small stall. She stopped everything. She gave my mother water. She held her hand. She sat with us for hours as my mother faded. My mother died that night, but her last words were, "Find that woman, thank her, repay the debt. She gave us peace when everyone else gave us closed doors." Mr. Alumide looked directly at Mama Kioma, tears streaming down his face. "That woman was you, Kioma. You probably don't even remember. It was just a cup of water to you, just a moment of compassion. But it was everything to us, everything. I've spent 15 years searching for you, trying to find the woman with the food stall who helped us that night. And now, because of this competition, I've finally found you." Mama Kioma's hands flew to her mouth. "I remember," she whispered. "A woman and her son, she was so sick. I remember, I prayed with you, but I just gave water, I just sat with you. It was nothing." "It was everything," Mr. Alumide's voice rang out passionately. "Don't you see? You gave when nobody else would. You gave 15 years ago when there was no competition, no prize, no recognition. You gave last night when there was a competition, but you didn't care about it. You give because giving is who you are, not something you do." The village stood in absolute awe. The connections, the timing, the impossible way everything had woven together over 15 years because of one woman's consistent kindness. Elder Okonkwo stepped forward. "The competition prize has been doubled, 1 million naira. It goes to Mama Kioma, not because she won a competition, but because she showed us what we've forgotten. Generosity isn't a performance. It's a way of life." The crowd erupted in applause, but Kachai raised his hand. "Wait, there's one more thing." The crowd quieted again, wondering what else could possibly be revealed. "I didn't just come back to test the village," Kachai said. "I came back because I've been planning something with Mr. Alumide. Something we've been working on for 6 months, ever since we met in Lagos and discovered we were connected through my mother." He gestured to a large cloth-covered structure at the edge of the square that nobody had noticed before. 2 men pulled the cloth away, revealing a beautiful sign. "KIBWEZI Community Center, sponsored by the Kioma Foundation. Opening January 2025. The crowd gasped. "Free education programs," Kacha continued, his voice strong with pride. "Business training, healthcare services, a library, computer classes, everything our village needs to thrive. And it's named after you, Mama, because your kindness, your compassion, your way of seeing people as human beings, that's the foundation of everything good in this world." The square erupted in celebration, dancing, singing, crying. Ngozi approached Mama Kioma with tears streaming down her face. "Forgive me, Mama. I forgot what it means to give. I performed instead of caring." Mama Kioma hugged her. "We all forget sometimes. The important thing is remembering." Pastor Adebio and Chief Mbanu came next, humbled and apologetic. Mama Kioma forgave them all because, of course, she did. That's who she was. As the celebration continued, families sharing food, children dancing, the village united in genuine joy rather than competition, a small voice interrupted the moment. "Mama Kioma." She looked down to see little Ada, the 12-year-old who had told her about the competition. "Yes, my dear." Ada pointed to the edge of the square. "That woman over there, she looks sad. She's pregnant and alone and nobody's talking to her." Mama Kioma followed her gaze and saw a young woman sitting by herself, clearly exhausted from travel, her pregnant belly prominent, her face worried. The entire square seemed to hold its breath, watching what Mama Kioma would do. She had just been celebrated, honored, given 1 million naira and a community center named after her. She could stay in the center of attention. She'd earned it. Instead, Mama Kioma smiled at Ada and walked away from the celebration, toward the lonely woman at the edge. "Hello, my sister," she said softly, kneeling beside her. "You look tired. Come, let me get you some food and water. When did you last eat?" Catch and Mr. Alumide watched from the platform, both smiling. Mr. Alumide leaned toward Catch and whispered, "That woman is my daughter. I asked her to come as one final test from a larger foundation that wants to fund more community centers. They wanted to make sure your mother was genuine." Catch shook his head, laughing. "It doesn't matter, she would have helped her anyway. That's just who she is." And he was right. Mama Kioma led the young woman to a shaded spot, brought her food and water, sat with her as she ate, asked about her journey, her baby, her needs. Not because anyone was watching, not because there was a prize, not because it would be photographed or praised. She did it because when she saw someone in need, she helped. That's all, that's everything. Little Ada watched the whole interaction, and in that moment she learned what true generosity looked like. She would remember this Christmas for the rest of her life. She would tell her own children about it someday, and the lesson would spread, ripple after ripple, generation after generation. As the sun set on Christmas Day in Kibwezi, casting long shadows across the square, Elder Okonkwo stood beside Mr. Alumide and Kachai, watching Mama Kioma care for yet another stranger. "You know what the greatest miracle is?" Elder Okonkwo said quietly. "Not that kindness changes things, but that in a world that rewards performance and competition, people like Kioma still exist. People who give simply because they see another human being." Mr. Alumide nodded. "My mother's dying wish was to find her and thank her. It took me 15 years, but I finally understand what my mother wanted me to learn. It's not about the thank you. It's about becoming the kind of person who gives the cup of water in the first place." Catch put his arm around both men. "Then let's make sure this community center teaches that. Let's make sure every child who walks through those doors learns what my mother taught me today. That true generosity isn't loud. It isn't performed. It isn't competed for. It's simply who you choose to be." The three men shook hands as the last light of Christmas Day faded into night, and in the distance, Mama Kioma could be heard laughing with the pregnant woman, sharing stories, sharing hope, sharing the only things that truly matter in this world. If this story moved you, if it changed how you see generosity, hit that like button right now. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And subscribe